Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the first ever Something to Chew on talk show. I am your host, Christine Fraser, and I could not be more excited to have you be a part of this talk show. We have a very special guest, Courtney, who is joining us live on the topic of emotional healing with juice feasting. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention before we get started is that we are not here to provide any medical advice, and we want you to make sure that you check with your doctor before taking any of our information and going off and using it, especially if you have any medical conditions. We are just here to provide insights and some nutritional support. So, what we'd love to start this off with is discovering what one thing you want to or hope to learn from this episode. So be sure to type in the chat. We want this to be interactive. So type in the chat what's one thing that you want to take away from this event today. Maybe it's inspiration, maybe it's healing, maybe it's new insights. I want you to type that now. I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to type in your words. We're going to be interactive, so fun. And remember that you can type your questions in the chat as you go along. We're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. So type in your chat, type in the word or phrase, and we're going to get right into introducing Courtney. So Courtney, welcome. I'm so excited. This is so fun to do this on this platform. But Courtney has had, I'm going to let her share a little bit of her journey, but I think it's such a profound story around how she went from truly, and we have some before and after photos as well, going into what she calls a crisis of body and soul. You know, she was working with a combination of autoimmune systems, hormonal problems, chronic fatigue, viral issues, and she was exhausted and feeling absolutely terrible all the time, binge eating and dealing with depression. So she's gone on to become this incredible juice feasting coach. She has been my personal juice feasting coach for the last probably over 10 years and has had incredible results with clients in healing the body, healing so many issues with the gut, with food, with health, with chronic illness, with all kinds of things. So I'm so excited to welcome you, Courtney. It's it's like we've been on so many journeys together, so I can't wait. And people in the audience, I love the clapping. That's so fun already to see. We do have a live studio audience. This is a first for me, so this is really exciting. Welcome, and I'd love to hear from you. Just what that was like, first of all, to live in all of that health issues, and how you actually came to juice feasting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for having me. Yeah. So I started having health issues quite young. So that was kind of what kicked me off. I started in my late teens having all of those issues that you mentioned. And, all of my friends were planning for college, and I was feeling like I could barely get out of bed because of feeling so bad. And, just didn't really know what to do. Obviously, I had the option of medications and stuff, like all of us kind of have the option, but I thought to myself, gosh, I'm young and I feel like I'm about 85. Something's not right there.
Right.
So, yeah, so initially, the very first exposure was the documentary Super Size Me about McDonald's
Okay.
and stuff. That was
Yes.
the very first thing. And at the time, I was an athlete and I was eating a lot of fast food every week. And, the food I ate at home pretty much was junk food and fast food and refined, and didn't know anything about nutrition, didn't believe it was relevant, just thought it was about carb loading for athletics and stuff. And ended up with all of these health issues. I also had been struggling with, I think at that point you could probably call it compulsive eating for since I was a kid, since I was a little kid. Uh,
And what does
and
that look like? Tell me what compulsive eating looks like. Like, what are you going
yeah,
through, and then what are you eating? So people
yeah.
can relate to
So
that.
it changed over time. Obviously, as you can imagine, what the compulsive eating kind of looked like when I was 8 years old was different than when I was 18. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but essentially, I was never checking in about hunger. I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
know what being hungry felt like. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know, like, that wasn't relevant to when you ate. From,
Yeah.
now I can look back and see that was never a part of the consideration. It was mealtime. It looked good. It smelled good. I felt like it. Um, but then it was, being drawn to a lot of junk food and um, having a compulsion to eat until I was really uncomfortably stuffed all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that had been my whole life, really, with the compulsive eating. When I was in school, some of that was offset by my athletics. But I got to this point in my late teens where the health issues had accumulated. I also, at the time, had been diagnosed with severe depression, um, and was feeling terrible. So discovered that documentary, and then after that, somebody gave me a book about natural health. And so it was kind of a series of resources that I was exposed to. And this was in like 2005, 2006. So it was kind of before like YouTube and stuff. So it was mostly like books and
Mm-hmm.
documentaries. And then so kind of discovered natural health and like organic eating and things like that. During this time, I was also simultaneously starting to go to therapy, looking into kind of like emotional healing for the first time in my life. So it actually happened at the same time, which I believe
Mm.
is a key factor in why healing happened. And yeah, just through the course of really setting off on this interest in natural health, I found books on plant based nutrition. I went vegan. And then I discovered books on juicing and cleansing, and started experimenting with that. And started really seeing an improvement in all of my physical symptoms, all
And
of my
then what
physical
brought you
problems.
to the Tree of Life? Because we met
Yeah.
actually for the audience members. We actually met at the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center when I went through my own bouts of depression. I was also very similar to really with I was a Muay Thai fighter. So I was like kickboxing, really highly active, but I would go to Wendy's and eat Wendy's chicken burgers were my thing, and
Wendy's
like
was my
ice
thing too.
creams and, and so it was a lot of fast food in my life too. And I had no correlation between what I was putting in my body and my mental and emotional health. So when did you go, what brought you to the Tree of Life after you, because I couldn't make the changes on my own. I was
Mhm.
reading the nutrition books too, but I was like, who eats salad? Who would ever put juice in their body? This is like gross to me. It just felt like that kind of classic rabbit food type mentality. So what,
Yeah.
you actually were making some changes, but then what drew you to go to the Tree of Life?
Yeah, so I was in college, and I was, basically, I was, going to normal classes that you go to, meanwhile spending all of my free time researching and learning about nutrition and health and, emotional healing and juicing. And it was almost one of those things where I'd have to get myself to do my normal homework for school
Hmm.
because I just wanted, I was just had my stacks of books on health and stuff. And so I kind of got to a point where it was a combination of wanting an environment where I could more easily heal myself because I was kind of
Hmm.
struggling between, well, the health issues had improved a lot, but kind of the remaining health stuff and also the depression and the binge eating, which
Hmm.
by this point, the binge eating, so weirdly, my health had improved by improving my diet a bit, but I was still binge eating very severely.
Got
And
it.
so I wanted to be in an environment that might be more conducive to healing. And I felt like being, where I was wasn't that conducive to it. And I also wanted to study more. And at the time, as again, this was 2006,
Hmm.
whenever I went to the Tree of Life initially. There wasn't a lot of info out there. There wasn't that many people you could learn from. There weren't college
That's true.
degrees you could get. There
Yeah.
weren't even really like certification programs. There's very few people you could
100%.
actually learn from. And so the center was a place where there was, doctors and professionals and experts that would come. And it was really, I saw it as like, okay, I'm going to go study hard in an
Immerse.
immersive environment. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that way too. And I just want to bring up this photo for everybody to see. This is Courtney before,
Mhm.
right? And I think some people can relate to that. Some people that might be watching might be that, or maybe, you know, feel worse than that in many cases. And it's just such an inspiration to me to see how quickly we can, not quickly, but how possible it is to change when we do all of the things, which is not just shifting the diet, but really dealing with that emotional healing element. And that's really the topic of today's call. And what I really want to dive right into is, how do you feel that juice feasting actually helps you heal emotional, like those emotional core wounds that we carry for why we eat the way we eat? And a lot of people, I think, don't
Mhm.
even recognize, they don't recognize that they're eating for emotional reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess step one is to understand that you're eating for emotional reasons. But then
Yeah.
how does juice feasting actually help heal those emotional wounds, I
Yeah.
guess, so to say?
Yeah, well, and just as a quick disclaimer, in this session and in my work generally, this is something I mostly teach with people who experience like overeating and binge eating. So juice cleansing is not always the best fit for somebody who has like an anorexia eating disorder or like a restriction eating disorder.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good to see.
yeah, but for people whose primary issue is kind of excessive eating and overeating
Mhm.
and more
And
of
I
an
would say even
addictive.
so much of the
Yeah,
world is just feeling like they want to lose weight. I don't know many
yeah,
women that have that 15 pounds, 20 pounds, 50 pounds of weight to lose, and they wouldn't necessarily call themselves compulsive eaters necessarily, but just food in general is so addictive in its nature nowadays that most
yeah.
people are to some degree compulsive eaters in some ways.
Yeah, and of course, when we use for me, I use the phrases compulsive eating, overeating, emotional eating kind of interchangeably. And of
Mhm.
course, there's a spectrum. There's some of us that are, I was on the more extreme end of the spectrum, and then there's, clear to quite a mild end. But basically, the way that juice feasting assisted me and the way that I teach it to people now, and Christine and I teach it to people, is that it provides an environment where you can, if you want to, tune more into yourself, especially emotionally. And it gives you a bit more of a bird's eye view on your relationship with food. So it's not to say that you can't heal emotional eating unless you do a juice feast, because you can. But when I first set out to experiment with whether juice cleansing might help me heal the overeating, the thought process I had was like, okay, food is an addiction for me. It's a compulsion for me. And I had recognized by that point that, and this is an important factor for everybody to realize, that it's a deeper thing going on than just like, it looks good, it smells good, I need better discipline, it's a willpower issue,
Mhm.
etc.
Or even, like, a lot of people don't even recognize maybe when they're bored and they eat, that that's still also emotional eating.
Totally. Yeah, things we just kind of consider
Basically, if you're
normal.
not eating for the purposes of nutrition, or, that is some level of emotional eating. And there's some forms, I think, of emotional eating that are actually, healthy in a sense of like, oh, I'm celebrating, I'm eating, we have so many things around food that aren't just like, we don't
Yeah,
just need our dog food of macronutrients all the time, but it's,
yeah,
there's some enjoyment and pleasure that comes with food, but
yeah,
there's also these underlying things. So how does going through the juice
yeah.
help clear some of that so we don't have those patterns anymore?
Yeah, so the way that you can approach it is by saying, okay, I'm going to take the opportunity to look at what my relationship with food is really about, what emotions I associate with certain types of foods, what emotions, painful or uncomfortable emotions, I get to avoid by using certain foods and drinks, and what those foods and drinks or those eating habits kind of, what role they play in our lives, right? So they might play the role of companionship um, or like avoiding our sadness. Or for some people, I know I at certain points in my life, food was like by far the number one thing that I look forward to in life. It was
Hmm.
the only thing really that I look forward to. So what roles does it play? And so I kind of looked at it like almost like a compulsive eating kind of rehab.
Yeah, yeah.
um, environment while I was simultaneously providing the conditions for my body to really heal.
Mhm.
And so on one hand, you also get the effect of your body being able to clear kind of whatever physical component of those addictions or those cravings are. It's enough, a juice cleanse does that quite easily. But
Mhm.
then even more effectively, it provides an environment where you can often more easily get in touch with yourself in a deeper way emotionally.
Mhm.
And then if you can spend the time while you're on the juice feast really focusing on what I call the root causes, the emotional root
Mhm.
causes of emotional eating,
Mhm.
then of course by the time you go back to food, you can have an incredible improvement in those tendencies. And that's not to
Yeah.
say that you're going to do a 7-day juice feast and heal 100% of your stuff with food, you know, and it's
No,
done.
it's an ongoing journey for sure, and
Yeah.
I think it's something, to add to that. I think for my journey, it was removing food from the equation and giving your body that the phytonutrients that it needs,
Yeah.
while on this sort of, I like to call it the 21st version of fasting, really, because when we're fasting, we're removing food from the equation, but with juice feasting, you're flooding the body with phytonutrients. You're getting all these alkaline greens that really help with energy levels, rebalancing, getting your body into a space of healing. But most people, and this was the biggest thing for me too, when I first went on that journey, was when you remove the food from the equation, you maybe didn't know how much emotional eating was there, but now you don't have anything to suppress the emotion that you were before. So a lot of times people get a lot of discomfort, and that it's like, or emotional, or it's like the emotions have been stored in ourselves. Trauma is stored in the body. Whether you've been through a very dramatic or traumatic experience in your life, dealt with certain relationships that are toxic, this stuff gets stored in the body. And the juice feast was like this path that really allowed the body to, you're no longer suppressing the emotion, so now it's going to come up. It's like an invitation to release, which
Mhm.
is actually where I think so many people are resistant to juice feasting, subconsciously. In a way, I think it's a subconscious thing. They're almost like scared of what might come up, but when you welcome it, it's almost like the most liberating thing. So what would you say to someone who feels that, like, ooh, I wouldn't want to know what would come up on my emotional, you know
Mhm.
bag of stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that you're right. It is kind of a thing people have a suspicion. They kind of go, "Ooh, I think I think a lot might come up for me if I did that," because they kind of know that
Mhm,
food's
mhm.
playing some of that role, and so they're like, "Ooh, don't know if I want that." I'm afraid of that, and I felt that way too. I mean, I was terrified, like not just afraid, like terrified.
Right.
Um, and I think that what I think that what helped me was just, looking at it as an experiment, I
Mhm,
wasn't really convinced that, it would be very good for me to get in touch with those emotions, but
mhm.
I had read materials and heard other people say that it was, and so
Yeah,
I thought, "Well, I'll try it," I've tried a lot of other things to lose weight and heal compulsive eating, and pretty much nothing has worked, so what
yeah,
do I have left to lose? I'll try it, and I do think it is a release process. I
yeah.
often tell my clients that the people who I see have the most success in healing, the next layer of their compulsive eating, if they're on a juice feast, let's say, the
Mhm,
people who have the most success are often the people who are the most emotionally messy, you know?
mhm.
So they're the ones that let
Yes.
themselves cry and kind of have meltdowns and kind of have breakdowns slash breakthroughs and just like
I love that you're
let it all
saying
come
this,
out,
because that
you
is
know?
so true. And I
Yeah.
think even for you and I, what we realize, or what I think why we've been so successful in continuing with the juicing, and so passionate about it, is because we were sort of the worst in a way, and I often tell people, like, you should applaud yourself if you are the more depressed one, the more, low energy, you tend to have the best results and the highest transformations. Even in our group that's going right now, some of the women that came in that were just depleted, you know one of our clients just was saying how she spend almost every night, she'd come home from work and just go to the couch and eat, go to the couch and eat. And she's already after her juicing experience, she's like, I have so much energy. I don't even want to sit down. I come home from work and I want to prep food and I want to clean. And I feel like my house is too clean now. And I laugh because I'm like, this is literally where you can get to, where you have so much energy, you don't know what to do with it. And I think a lot of people don't even recognize that. So I want to sneak in a little poll here question for everybody. If you could just tap one of these, we're so curious. What's your familiarity with the topic of juice feasting? Always curious if we're talking to the beginner who's never tried a juice feast. If you've maybe tried a little bit of juicing in your life, you're familiar with it, put intermediate or advanced. If you're like, I juice all the time, so curious to see where you're at. And then we have a quick question for Courtney. We'll sneak in. If you have any questions, you can fill them in the chat. Again, this is so interactive. I'm so loving having the audience here with us to go through this. And then we're going to ask Courtney a little bit about how long to go with the juicing. So first, I want to go with asking this question. So Tammy submitted a question about what's the best juicer to use that produces quality juice but has easy cleanup?
Yeah, so Christine would be a good person to answer this as well. But so the funny truth, even as for me as a juice cleansing coach, is that most of my years I've used the blender nut milk bag method to make juice. The vast majority of the last 17 years or so.
Honestly, me too. That's what I did
Yeah,
for years. Just a Vitamix, blend it up, and then use a nut milk bag to strain it is the fastest for cleanup.
yeah, it's really fast for cleanup. It's really, easy to set up. Even though it's a two-step process, it tends to be faster than a lot of juicers. So that's what I've used the majority of the time, is a Vitamix and a nut milk bag to make juice. I have heard really good things about the Nama 2 juicer, but I have not tried it yet myself. That's kind of the Vitamix of juicers, one of the more expensive ones.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, juicers are a bit like blenders where you can kind of get what you pay for. You can
Yeah.
get a really cheap one from Walmart, or you can get the best of the best, which
Yeah.
if you see yourself using a juicer regularly over a long-term period of time, then it would definitely be worth the investment.
Yeah. And I would say I love that answer because people are like waiting for a juicer answer, like, actually, don't use a juicer.
I know.
But I would say from a juicer perspective, I've used a lot. I used to have the Green Star, which is the $800
Hmm.
juicer. That's like,
Hmm.
it's super slow, but probably the best quality.
Yeah,
And
they
then I
had
was
that
like,
one at the Tree of Life as well.
yeah, they had that in
Yeah.
the Stream Life. I never used it, so I was like, what a waste of time or what a waste of money, really. And then so I ended
Mm-hmm.
up selling that. And I actually have a Breville. I do recommend a
Mm-hmm.
Breville is kind of a nice. I would say that's kind of Tammy for your, to answer like a juicer question. That's I would say is. There's the omegas and stuff too. I think are decent, but Jack LaLanne's for $60. Those are
Mm-hmm.
they're all
I've
going to
used
be
them.
some level.
Mhm.
They're all going to be some level of cleanup, and they're either going
Yeah.
to be masticating or they're going to be, in the big scheme of things. I feel like um, I personally like a Breville, and the one tool I always recommend to my clients too is also called a pump and seal. We'll put that in the show notes after, the pump and seal, because that to me has been a great tool that you can pump and seal out your jars so you get the oxygen levels out so they don't putrefy, they don't go as bad, so you can keep them in the fridge for up to 3 days, because otherwise you want your juice to be only used that day. So we have one more quick question, and then or there's a couple here, but I'm going to go to one and then we'll go back to conversation, back to the question. But this is a good one. I like this. Will juicing still work for someone who has a lot of disruption to their routine, like travel and sickness, young kids in daycare? I'm going to start by saying it's not only would it work, it's almost you're going to find life to be 10 times easier by adding juice to your life. That's what we find with most people who are the busier you are, juicing is going to be amazing. But can you speak to that too a little bit, Courtney? Someone who's busy?
Yeah, I mean, the question sounds like it's phrased as kind of adding juice in, not necessarily a juice cleanse. That would
Hmm.
be some slightly different arrangements. But yeah, in terms of adding juicing in, like Christine said, we do hear that a lot actually from people, where if they just make the time in advance to make the juice, which does take a little bit of forethought to kind of go, okay, when am I going to have 15 or minutes or 30 minutes or something? But Then once it's made, what's great about it is, it can be very transportable, depending on what vessel you put it in, obviously. And so for busy people, it often works quite well because if they don't have time to sit down and make, a longer meal, sometimes juicing is actually quicker and they don't have to take the time to stop and eat. And like,
Yeah.
something like a kale salad, which I love kale salad, takes a long time to chew.
Hmm.
So, a juice is easy to kind of drink while you're on the go. And because of the amount, especially if it's a green juice, we should probably talk about green and fruit juice a little bit, but especially if it's a
Yeah.
green juice with lots of leafy greens and kind of low glycemic ingredients, then it's going to give you energy as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And help with mental focus, help battle kind of that afternoon slump. It's not that green juice has like a stimulant effect, but I've been amazed how many times I've drank a big green juice and almost feel like, oh, well, I was going to have some chocolate to get some caffeine. Now I don't need it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
so yeah, you have a little bit of planning ahead for when you make the juice, but after that, it's actually quite a good strategy for people who are very busy, I think.
It's similar to me like meditation or it's one of those things where you're like, I don't have time to meditate or I'm busy to meditate and you'll find that when you start the meditation practice, it's almost like you feel you won't be the person that says you don't have time anymore. You get into a more expansive state and things just flow a little bit better. I'm going to go to our last question here. And if anybody else has more questions to submit, we're gonna go till about 12:45, just so everybody knows. If for any more questions, we're gonna get into a little bit around the spirituality of juice feasting as well, and some of the things that you can expect to from a juice feast that are beyond, say, the typical weight loss. The physical symptoms, the energy levels. Those are very prominent results from a juice cleanse, but I can't wait to talk about some of the other things that excite me the most because they're sort of the unexpected or things that most people wouldn't expect to have from a juice feast. But this is a great segue question, I thought. So, can juicing help with mental concentration and focus?
Mm. Yeah, it definitely can. Definitely.
I'm like, can it help? It can like absolutely like
Yeah.
accentuate all of the above. Yes.
I mean, I remember when I first started changing my diet into a plant-based diet and juicing and juice cleansing. I remember having the distinct thought, and this applied to more than just the mental focus, but I remember having the thought, like, I didn't realize that I had been living with chronic brain fog and like felt like my brain was not functioning on all cylinders, but I didn't even know that that was happening until I changed my diet. So it was one of those things the first, 18, 19 years of my life, you just think it's normal. Like I thought the way that my body felt was normal. I thought the way that my concentration worked was normal. I didn't realize that there was anything wrong.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't bad enough that I was like went to a doctor to try to figure it out, but I just didn't know. And then once I started changing my diet, um, and the emotional healing work. But once I started really changing my diet, like I was just amazed. It was like somebody had, wiped off dust off a window or something like that. It
Yeah.
really, really made a big difference for me.
I
Yeah.
love that. I often say that it's like taking a squeegee through your soul, like your mind, body, soul. So not only, and this is going to really lead into our question I kind of want to jump into, which is around the spiritual benefits, and then we're going to touch base a little bit on how to get started on a juice cleanse as well, or adding juice to your diet and how to get started with that. But the thing that with the spiritual aspects, it's also things like your productivity is enhanced when you're feeling stagnant, lethargic, maybe lacking clarity in your life, overwhelmed, feeling grief. These are things often people don't realize are in your physicality. So, like Courtney was saying, you get more mental focus and clarity because really everything's so connected to our gut. We all understand that gut health is sort of the powerhouse of where everything heals from. But with juicing, what you're doing is you're literally clearing the gut, which is like clearing the window in your brain, which most people don't associate together, but they're literally connected. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, a juice cleanse is clearing the gut, which is like it's like taking a squeegee through the body. And what I like to think about it, or the analogy I like to give, one of my mentors always used the reference of clearing mud out of the vessel. And mud is literally the stresses of our lives, the overwhelm, the this, that, and the other. And juice feasting to me has been one of the most powerful tools to clear the mud out of the vessel. Now, when we do that, we not only get the mental clarity, focus, productivity, you start to function as a normal human being is what I used to say. I'm like, oh, this is what normal people feel like. Like you can actually have energy in the day. You're not just sluggish and needing a coffee. You know, the way most people are operating is was really unfortunate. So, but the unexpected things, like for me, most people don't know this, but Courtney has been my juice feasting coach for the last 10 years. So since I quit my engineering career, she was part of that journey. You know, she's always been this little key points in my journey where I was I wanted to leave my engineering career. I don't know if there's ever been a time or looking for clarity on your next steps in your life, right? So you're uncertain, should I do this or should I do that? And for me, I had it on my heart, which we want to listen to is our hearts, and to go to culinary school. But I just thought, my brain thought this was insane, this is crazy. So we all have this form of resistance to follow our hearts. And for me, it was like months and months and months of really wanting to do this jump, but there's a lot of fear, right? We all carry fear to some degree and we want to stay in our comfort zones. And I called up Courtney and went through a 10-day juice feasting experience with her because I was just kind of sick of my own stuff, tired of my own like doubts and fears and worries and like just I don't know. And then I was drinking too much again because like you're suppressing something when you're eating the cookies or you're binging on those chocolates or whatever it might be. You don't realize like what you're suppressing. And so I called Courtney and I went on this 10-day juice feast, and she's been there through several of them along the way, in very key points in my own life where after the 10th day, I literally went and submitted my resignation letter the next day. I had been sitting there for 6 years wanting to move into the world of nutrition, but I worked as an engineer. It was over a year of wanting to go to this culinary school that focused on food and healing in New York. And it was after that 10 days of juicing and a few other catalysts in my life of friends that it was like the releasing of the resistance, and I just went. And it was almost like I felt infinite, like unstoppable. It's that unstoppable energy. And if we look at our bodies like a magnet, your juice feasting to me is like you're tuning your magnet to a higher vibration. You start attracting incredible things into your life. I really feel like it's a powerful tool in terms of manifesting, in terms of love, in terms of attracting things into our life. So I'm so curious, Courtney, for you to speak on some of these other aspects of what juice feasting brings into people's lives out of all the people you've worked with, and in sort of that going through different changes and how they, you know, shift through experiences in their life through a juice feasting experience.
Yeah. Well, and I can relate to it myself as well because I've used it for those kinds of transition points or feeling, places, times where I felt like I was stuck in certain ways. And I think that there's a couple of things that's happening. I think, like you said, if you're in this cycle where you're using a lot of alcohol and cookies and food and kind of in that sort of ongoing stupor of compulsions with those things, um, it's amazing how much those can help us to kind of tolerate things in our lives that we're not really happy with. And so, what I think is amazing about juice feasting is how once you start one and you're not using those other coping mechanisms anymore. I think for a lot of people, it really becomes clear how foods and drinks that they, their habits before, how that was making certain things tolerable to them
Mhm.
that now they can't really say is tolerable to them anymore,
That's a beautiful way of putting it. It's like the vibration doesn't match anymore. You know, we're often suppressing and like kind of living in mediocrity in a lot of ways, and it's almost like this rising to a higher level in a way of happiness, of joy. And you can't be in a miserable relationship when you have more joy in your life. It's just sort of like, okay, like, so I've seen it with relationships too, where people have, I've had lots of women come through our inner glow transformation journey that were in a toxic relationship, and they went through their juice feast, and that they just ended the relationship they've been in for years and years and years. And it's like, it's time for that clarity and that up leveling in a way.
Yeah, so I've had a lot of people decide to change where they live or what they do for work or what they're studying in school or change their relationship, um, because they go on the juice feast. They realize how much they were using those other things to avoid it, and then they just feel like they have to make a different decision. And sometimes the changes are not that dramatic. It's not always like leaving a relationship or a job.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's,
Hmm.
oh, I just realized I need to have a conversation with my partner about this thing that I've been avoiding, or I
Yes.
need to speak up about something at work, or, I've been avoiding this grief about this thing, about my mom dying a year ago. I never like, so sometimes it's not these huge changes, but it's when you remove the foods and the drinks and you don't have those to lean on, you just realize, okay, something's got to change. And then people often feel compelled to go and have
Yeah.
a conversation with somebody or feel some emotion they've been avoiding or take an action.
It's like a
Yeah.
huge sense of relief, I feel like. And you're right. And it doesn't, for me, it's been very dramatic, or like very drastic. But I think I was living the other thing would say is like, you lean into your authenticity. Authenticity comes out. So if you're not living an authentic life, it will be like, oh, here you go. But, and you're right about the relationships too, because we've had some people who are in long-term relationships, and I've had women come to my retreats that say that they are ready for a divorce. They've been married for 30 years, and then they leave the retreat going through the healing work and the juicing and all the things, and then they leave and they just smile. And I said, how are you feeling now? And they're like, I've never been more in love. It was all me. It was all my own stuff, and I actually can't wait to go home and just give this man the love that he actually deserves, and I haven't been giving him. And so they got
Mm,
to really see that their own
mm,
inner turmoil, because often we want to point the finger outwards, where it's like, you're
mhm,
not making me happy, when it's also like,
mhm.
actually, maybe when I just heal myself and get through some of the things, then it
Yeah,
actually can
it's a
really
really good point.
cannot
Mhm.
connect relationships. That was probably one of my favorites, because I used to be one of these people that was like, yeah, you need to end that relationship. And I was always like, end the relationship kind of person. Then I was like, no, actually, we just need to get back to that love, and then the
Yeah.
relationship will heal too. So,
Yeah,
um,
sometimes it's staying in the situations that you're in, but then just realizing a conversation needs to happen, or you need to feel some emotion or something. Yeah.
exactly. So Maxine says, how important is it to have a variety of greens? I live in an area where it is limited.
Yeah. So it's not required to have a variety of greens. I've
Hmm.
worked with people all over the world who, for various, had clients in rural Norway and, um,
Hmm.
all kinds of people in different places where generally, or for the time of year, it's limited. So, do the best you can. Even if you only have access to like two different varieties. What I will say is, I have noticed, and this doesn't happen to everyone, but sometimes if people do, and it seems to only happen with leafy greens, doesn't happen with fruits and like other things, but if people have large amounts of the same leafy green, kind of like day after day after day after day, their body will kind of start rejecting it. It's not that it's like an allergy, and it's also not typically permanent, but it's like your body's just kind of like, all right, you know, 2 pounds of kale for the last 14 days is like every day is just, I'm done with that for now. And so like what will happen is then they drink that juice and they'll feel like quite an aversion to it, or it'll even upset their stomach a little bit, kind of
Hmm.
feeling. So I have noticed that happens. And often when that happens, if people do change the leafy greens that they're drinking, give themselves a break from the ones they were having maybe for a couple of days, that'll go away.
Hmm.
Um, so that is helpful. And obviously, with every fruit and vegetable, each one has a different nutritional profile. So by having a variety, you are getting a better array of nutrients and effects in your body.
Mm.
But I've worked with many people who have done juice feasting who, because of where they live, they only have access to maybe, lettuce and spinach and that's it, or
Mhm.
kale and lettuce and that's it. And yeah, you can do a juice feast under those
Yeah.
circumstances. Yeah.
Absolutely, getting resourceful. Okay, well, I think one of the most important aspects of this whole conversation is what should people consider when to ensure they don't just fall back to old habits, because this is what I see the majority of the world do is they're like they get inspired, okay, this juicing thing, I'm gonna go heal my emotions. And they go out and they buy their juicers and they do juice for a few days. But what do you think are those key elements? And I'll speak to this too after as well, because I think there's some that I know for me have been very important, but to ensure that people don't just fall back to old habits.
Yeah. Well, you were saying most people go out and they're like, I'm going to get this juicer and I'm going to heal these emotions. I actually find that that's pretty rare that people do a juice feast wanting to heal their emotions. So if you do have that genuine desire, you're probably pretty likely to
Or
have
I guess
some
I
good.
would say I would say it's mostly it's
I'm
most
going, man, you've got a good sampling of people that you know. So, yeah. Um,
they're not jumping out to heal their emotions. I actually think most people, even when I talk about emotional healing, people are like, "What? No, I just want to lose the weight or whatever."
yeah.
I would say
Yeah.
they want a juicer because they want to go on maybe a weight loss journey or something. But what
Yeah.
are these key elements? I love that people can laugh. I love the emojis and things. So keep them coming because they're fun. Little claps. How's everybody doing out there? You guys enjoying the show? But
Um,
yeah, I'm so curious
yeah.
yeah, what would you say are those
But
key
yeah,
elements?
not going back into the same habits because there's a lot of juice cleanse coaches out there who like don't talk about the emotional side and they're like, do the juice cleanse and it's going to change your life and you're going to lose all this weight and it's going to be permanent and it's all going to be great. And
Hmm.
I would never do that to people because I'm like, I know that it's a deeper thing. And you don't want to have that experience where you do a juice feast and then you go back to eating and you go back to all the same habits and you know if weight loss was one of the things you were seeking, you regain the weight, or if other health issues were at play, they come back, those symptoms come back. So um really the way to prevent that, and again, when I say prevent it, it's not to say you do a 7-day juice feast 100% of your food issues are going to be healed forever.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
this is true. Yeah.
but you can have a juice feast, and this is what I'll describe next, with the right kind of intentions, to the point where when you go back to food, whatever layer of the onion you kind of healed while you were on
Mhm.
that particular juice feast, that never comes back. Like,
Mm,
it's done. You healed it. And so in order to have that, and then you keep going, on the journey.
yeah,
But
there's
in
new
order to
layers.
have that kind of experience where you can look back on a juice feast and be like, man, like I really healed some, I was going to swear, but I healed some stuff. And, you know, and I really like that was changing. That changed something. I had a real shift there, and it shows up in your behavior, in your compulsions after. That really is going to be a matter of looking at it from those more root cause issues. Because the juice feast is going to do what it's going to do physically. It's going to be wonderful physically. It's going to alkalize you. It's going to be anti-inflammatory. It's going to do all the great things. But if you can really spend the time on the juice feast, really focus on these questions of like, well, lots of questions.
Mhm,
Where am I in my life? How do I feel about where I am in my life? How do I feel
mhm,
about all aspects of my life? What's my
mhm.
relationship with emotions? What do I do whenever I get stressed? What does food represent to me? What is it associated with? What would need to change in order for me not to use food as a coping mechanism so much? And those are very existential questions, but you can chip away at them on a juice feast, through
Yes.
various. I'm a big fan of journaling exercises and reflection exercises, and there's other tools that you can use. And so if you can do that while you're on the juice feast, then you can have that effect. And I had that experience. I did a 60-day juice feast, 2 months, many
60
years
days,
ago.
60 days, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
60
six
days.
zero.
I've done
And
17 was my highest, and it was so
yeah.
transformative. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, and I had that approach. I was like, "All right, time for, some meltdowns and some deep reflection," some deep reflection and some real, like, heart to hearts with myself and etcetera.
Mhm.
And I was able to do a lot of that on that juice feast, and even when I finished, it wasn't, again, even with the 60-day juice feast, it wasn't that 100% of my relationship with food was healed forever. But
Mhm.
there was a certain, like, level of my food compulsion that after I finished that juice feast, I never went back to that behavior, ever.
Mhm.
And now it's
Mhm.
been, I don't know how many years since that juice feast, over a decade, and I
Yeah.
never went back, and I never gained back that particular amount of weight because I didn't
Yeah.
resume
Because you
that
got back through
behavior with
that.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So I to add to that, and one of the things that I think Courtney's so brilliant at is those introspective questions. So many people they like just buy juice cleanses from a store and they're not really taking that time to introspect. So what I would want to invite for everybody too, and we're going to close up the call here right away, but is to have that community and that support and to do that introspection. But also, for me, what I found is to build the cooking skills. And that's where we kind of come in together as a team, as is when you have the cooking skills and you actually prepare your body for the juice feast prior. That's also an important step. Then you go through the juice feast, you have new habits to go back to, where it's not this foreign concept of new meals, but you have that guidance of, oh my gosh, now I get this new form of deliciousness to eat. And that's, for me, I've always said I just upgraded my nutrition, where I'm eating things that are delicious, simple, like easy to prepare and taste good. And I can't imagine going back. I just don't, you just don't physically have those cravings, but you really want to have that support on what to eat afterwards. And that's where we kind of are a good duality. And one of the other aspects we do in our 90-day transformation program in our coaching packages is also tools like breath work and energy healing. We have several different packages. So what we want to do with everybody is just give you the opportunity to submit your health goals. So we're actually doing a special offer for everybody that's shown up live on our first talk show. We have a special offer for you once you submit your health goals to us. We're going to get you a free recipe package at the end of the once you've got your health goals to us. So I want everybody to just click the link on the screen. I think you'll see it says click here. Click there while we're still on here. I'm going to give everybody a minute to submit your health goals, and we're going to get you a free recipe package and see if you want to work with us in the new year. We have our 90-day transformation program. We're going to be opening the wait list for that in the new year, where you get one-to-one juice feasting with Courtney. You get energy healing sessions. We have breath work, and I guide you personally through the meal prep and getting you healthy and getting you a whole new toolkit of healthy recipes so that you can move forwards and actually reach your health goals. So I'm really happy to have had Courtney join us. I'm so excited you all came to the first episode ever. This is very exciting. And we have one final question from Miss Tara Patton. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're here, you queen. So let's go to one final question with Miss Tara. Everybody got the link there. How do you feel about ongoing celery juicing? And I'll go back to the page where you can fill out your health goals for everybody that missed it. But how do you feel about ongoing celery juicing?
Yeah, I think it's great.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's a great practice. Yeah. I'm not particularly attached to it having to be always celery and only celery. So I
Hmm.
think an ongoing green juice that might include celery and cucumber and other things as well is also great. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I kind of feel like you can listen to your own intuition on that one too. When everything, you might drink celery juice. Some people I know they do that for months and months. They just drink celery juice straight up. And then you might be like, it's kind of like the Forrest Gump syndrome when he's going for a run and then he's like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. Next thing. So amazing. Well, if anybody has any final questions, we're going to be posting the episode on YouTube. We'll be getting it shared. Thank you so much for joining. If you have other topics you're interested in, we'll be sending out a form for you to complete on other topics that you're interested in hearing and other guest experts. But I just want to have everybody give Courtney a big round of applause for joining us today, because I know you can applaud down there. I know you can applaud.
Oh,
And make sure that you submit your health goals before we pop off here. So we click the link. Thank you all so much for joining. This has been so fun. Thank you, Courtney,
yeah, thanks
for a
for having
short
me.
and sweet little chat on juice feasting. There's such a plethora of wealth of information from this woman that you can continue to go on. So I hope you submit your goals, and we can see how we can work together and get you on your juice feast and get you your healthiest self. So thank you so much. We'll be sharing how to connect with Courtney too through Instagram, her website, all that good stuff. She's got lots of great information. So let's get healthy, everybody.
Yay. Awesome. Good to see you.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Christine.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.